welcome to our presentation this morning on immersive technology, AR and VR. You'll see that we're going to be using a Pear Deck today, as long as technology cooperates. So if you want to go ahead and go to joinpd.com and type in this code, it will connect you to our Pear Deck. And Melissa is here with me from our Technology Learning Center to help with any tech issues, and I have the chat open, so I'm going to try and keep an eye on that. We'll be doing some different activities together, some breakout rooms and some exploration, some different things. I've got two screens going, so if it looks like I'm looking in another direction, I am. All right, it is 10:01, so if you will go to joinpd.com, I might be able to get this to work here for me. Drop that as a link in the chat box. Just to help you out a little bit, there's the link. So we've got a couple of people connected. So if you'll click on that link, and then you can type in the code here, HYDHTH. I love how Pear Deck always puts some kind of silly little phrase in there. Hilarious yards daringly help troubling highlighters. If anyone is having any issues getting into Pear Deck, let me know. Otherwise, we'll give you just a couple minutes to get in, and then we'll get started. Still having people pop in. Again, I'm Ann Broyles. I am a clinical instructor here at UCA in the Department of Leadership Studies, and I teach the instructional technology courses in our grad school. So welcome. I always say, and I realized that my bio is not quite up to date, because I think it says still refers possibly as a East teacher at Maumelle Middle School, which I was for 3 years before joining UCA last year. We've got 6 people logged in. Got 7 now. I'll give you a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. Put the code here is HYDHTH. Type that in the chat. And again, if anybody's having any trouble or anything, let me know. Let's see. I'm trying to think about this space. I think when I was practicing, I didn't need the space, but maybe if it doesn't work without the space, then put the space between the two. I'll be honest, I have used Nearpod and PlayPosit, and I was very fortunate to be able to go to the ISTE conference in New Orleans, and Pear Deck was really just kind of like everywhere. They had a big party and were really promoting themselves, and I got a free trial, so I thought, well, this will be the perfect time to check this out and try Pear Deck and see how it works. So far, I really kind of like the different features, especially you can add things into your presentation as you're doing it, which is helpful. Okay, so again, we're going to use Pear Deck. You can join at joinpd.com, and the code is going to stay up here in the top corner. And since it's 10:05, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the first screen that you'll see is for UCA and the different advanced degree and certificate programs that we have. I'm actually working on my PhD through the Change Leadership for Equity and Inclusion in the Digital Age Curriculum and Instruction Program. I teach in the instructional technology well, I guess I teach a little bit from all three. The online teaching and learning, I tell people when they ask me what I do, I teach teachers online to be online teachers, and media design and development, which is really kind of my favorite thing to do, and then some of the computer science teaching and learning classes. So, and Melissa's going to share some information with you guys in the chat about some of our different sessions and when you'll get credit for or certificate for this course and things like that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. We're going to be talking about augmented reality and virtual reality and how that relates to immersive tech. Again, I'm Ann Broyles. I have a master's in educational leadership with my principal certification. I also have a master's in instructional technology from UCA. Our agenda for today, we're going to have a little welcome. We're going to talk about learning goals. We're going to talk about what is AR and VR. We're going to look at where it's been, where we are now, and what the future is. And we're going to explore what are some things that you could do with AR in the classroom, and then what are some things that your students can do? How can we move them from being consumers to creators? And then we'll have some time for question and answers. So the first thing that we're going to do, and I have this on the Pear Deck, but I'm also going to share it in, as I move all these things around, and the chat box is just so we can get an idea of who's here. I have a Jamboard that we're going to be using. We're going to have one file where we're going to add and do some different activities so that you're not trying to navigate too many different links. So on that Jamboard, if you'll go in and just pick a sticky note or a text box and share your name and your school and your district, and you'll see that I've got it separated into 3 different sections, and that may or may not apply to everyone. We've got K-5, we have middle school, we have high school, and if that doesn't relate to your specific position that you're doing now, you can just kind of drop it down on the bottom. So just a little bit more about me. I worked in the hotel and restaurant industry and customer service and things like that up until my early 30s. And then I went back to school through an alternative certification program to be a teacher. So I've taught middle school language arts for, I think I did that for 6 years when we were in East Texas and Longview. And because of my background in hotel and restaurant management, I ended up being the culinary teacher at the high school for 5 years, which I loved. And then we moved to Arkansas in 2018, and I was a 6th grade language arts teacher at Maumelle Middle School for the first year, and then moved into East teacher position or East facilitator position for the last 2 years that I was teaching in public school through the height of the pandemic, while I was doing my master's in instructional technology. So I really had a great opportunity to work with my students and turn over a lot of the control of learning to them and let them be the ones who chose the technology. And most of the time, because there were so many different projects going on, I would have them teach me what they were doing. And it was definitely a fun experience to do that. All right, so we've got some K-5 and we've got some middle school and some high school teachers out there. So welcome everybody. My experience with AR and VR, I consider myself in this adventure we're going to go on today more of a tour guide. I'm still learning about a lot of this. And I'm going to go to the next slide where we're going to talk about our learning goals. So the first thing we're going to do is look at what is AR and VR and look at some vocabulary that you could in turn then share with your students. We're going to look at the past, present, and future of AR and VR. And we really want to look at the current and anticipated trends so that we can design student-centered learning that is going to benefit our students as they move into their adult life. What can you as a teacher do with AR? How can you utilize or create a variety of student-centered AR and VR activities? There's a lot of stuff out there that's already created that you can tweak a little bit to use. And then I am a big proponent of having students not be passive consumers, but being creators. So how can we turn that over to our students, and what are some good applications that they can use to do that? And I closed, unfortunately, all the little windows here. Gonna see if there's any questions. Let me see. Let me open the chat box. Okay, there we go. All right. So let's take a poll. What do you think of when you hear the terms AR and VR? So you should have on your screen now it's split where you can see my screen, but you can also see where you can type your answers. So think about when you hear the words or the terms AR and VR, what do you think of? And then once you put your responses in, then I can show it here. So accelerated reader and virtual reality. Yeah, I remember accelerated reader, being a language arts teacher. Getting dizzy playing a video game. You know, I'm glad you brought that up because that was one thing I wanted to mention with the VR and did not get that in there. You do really have to be careful with the VR glasses if you're using them in the classroom, because it does affect people sometimes with getting dizzy and things like that. And you may end up having to get like parent permission and things like that. Interactive and immersive gaming, yeah. That's what I think of too. I wasn't always on board with this just because I felt like it was a lot of gamification. And I was concerned that the learning was getting lost in the game playing. But the more research I do, the more I see that it can really benefit the students more than I appreciate it. Okay, so let's talk about what AR and VR is. This is the first time I saw AR. was Pokemon Go. And I don't remember how many years ago when that first came up. And I think it was my kids at the time were like, oh, hey, have you seen this new game? And we really, our little town got into Pokemon Go. And it really actually ended up revitalizing our downtown, which had really pretty much died out after 5 o'clock. There was nothing down there. And all of a sudden, Pokemon Go came and there were just all these different Pokemon. So we would go downtown after work, especially when, because this came out in the summer for us and it was hot and it was a little bit cooler. And it was such a neat experience. And then people started to go, hey, we could open up a business down there. We got a brewery, we got a coffee place, we got restaurants, stores started staying open later than they used to. So it was really interesting to see how that affected things that you wouldn't think would be affected by that game. Now I've seen that I can go on Amazon and anything I want to buy, including a bottle of shampoo, that seems kind of strange, that you can now use AR to place it where it might go in your house to see if that item is something that you want, which I think is really interesting from a business perspective, that by doing that, I wonder if they have less returns. I don't know. So we're going from gaming, we're going to shopping. You see things like this in museums and different things like that, where you can either use your own device or check out a device where instead of having this physical display in front of you, now you have this AR that can help you feel more immersed in that experience. So that's an interesting development. This is probably where my thought was when I looked at VR. I see some pros and some cons with this picture. First of all, when I first looked at it, it made me sad because all of these people look so isolated. And, as a teacher, I was thinking, I really want to see people sharing together, not being so isolated by that. But then on the other hand, we can't really see what's going on. They may be in a virtual room together sharing an experience. So it's neat that technology can let each person choose their adventure in a sense. But I think we also need to be careful that this doesn't become the reality all the time. This is also what I think of when I think of VR. Primarily, my son is very much into this technology and he has a very expensive VR headset that he uses. So I just think of gaming. But as I started my research into this, I was amazed at how much AR and VR is actually used, especially like in construction and engineering and manufacturing. It's really fascinating to me that I think it's HoloLens too, that, and I have some different links that I'm going to share with you later, but they have a construction hard hat with the eye gear installed in it. So they can be out on like construction sites and things like that using augmented reality to work on whatever project they're doing. And it's really pretty cool. There's some other things that I thought about when I looked at these pictures, having taken a class for my PhD in the spring. We have 2 males, we have looks like 2 white males. So we really want to look at engaging our female students, our students of color, and getting them ready for being engaged in these careers. All right, so let's talk about some definitions. And I don't see that anybody has any questions. If you do have questions, put them in the chat. So virtual reality, when we're talking about virtual reality, we're talking about something that immerses the user in a 360 environment. It's computer generated simulation, and it's viewable through a VR headset, and you can move through and interact with that environment. When we're talking about augmented reality, we're talking about layers of digital enhancement where you have top, you just layer different objects, um, digital objects on top of objects that are in the physical world. And you use a device like a smartphone and it's loaded with AR software. And there are some really cool things that students can do with AR that is going to take, I think, their projects instead of, like doing a physical diorama, doing something with augmented reality. Mixed reality includes both of those so that you're combining a digital interaction like the VR world, but it's now using real things around you. 360 is simply any kind of content that gives viewers a 360 view of the environment. In fact, we were at Home Depot yesterday. We bought a house that needs a lot more renovations than we anticipated. And as we were talking to one of the employees helping us, I noticed that they had some different things promoting 360 so that you can do your kitchen design and things like that in the 360 environment. So that's another way that we're already seeing these things out in the real world. Not that teaching isn't the real world, because it is. Augmented reality often uses a trigger image or a target to activate that digital layer. Okay, so we're going to move on. So our first two learning goals are pretty fast. So we've talked about what AR and VR is, but now we're going to look at, when students say, why do I need to know this? It's really going to be a huge part of their lives in entertainment, in shopping, in their work lives, training for jobs that they're hired to do, healthcare. So I thought about different ways to say this, and really this video right here is just the best way to get a feel for what was going on leading up to where we are now and then what the future looks like. So we're going to take a few minutes and watch this video and then share some ideas.
As curious beings, it's in our nature to wonder about the future. Even when we think about the past, it's only because we are hardwired to find patterns so we can better predict future outcomes. The driving force that shapes almost every aspect of the future of our civilization is technology. It's a gripping thought when you realise that for most of the time in human history, the lives of our ancestors were not that much different from their previous generation. The human species is about 200,000 years old, and most of that time, humans were hunters and gatherers. Even after we developed civilization, after the invention of agriculture, the lives of ordinary people living in, let's say, the first century of the Common Era remained relatively unchanged compared to people living 1,000 years later. Civilization shifted into the next gear only when the Industrial Revolution kicked in. In a span of only 260 years after the first Industrial Revolution, technology transformed our lives more than ever before in the history of our species. Most science fiction movies portray the lives of people living in the future with fancy gadgets and equipment, fulfilling all of our needs by command. Perhaps the first technology to mimic such a scenario and make us feel like we are living in the future is going to be the use of XR, or extended reality. So, what is exactly XR? To better understand the prospects of extended reality and its applications, we first need to learn about its constituents. XR encompasses a conglomeration of virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. First, let's take a look at the most familiar one, VR. Virtual reality is the use of computer technology to create a simulated experience that can be similar to, or completely different from, the real world. Standard virtual reality systems use either VR headsets or multi-projected environments to generate realistic visuals and sounds. The VR headset, with its user interface, offers you a digital experience that you can immerse yourself in any created 3D environment instead of just watching on a conventional 2D computer screen. Some early prototypes of virtual experiences predate even digital computing. Morton Helling wrote in the 1950s of an experience theatre that could encompass all the senses in an effective manner, drawing the viewer into the on-screen activity. In 1962, he built a prototype of his vision called Sensorama, along with 5 short films to be displayed in it while engaging multiple senses such as sight, sound, smell and touch. Today there are countless companies producing VR headsets. Among the most popular ones are Sony's PSVR, the standalone Oculus Quest, Valve Index, HTC Vive, etc. Obviously gaming is the major industry propelling VR forward, but there are other fields beginning to incorporate virtual reality such as education, medical training, and healthcare in general, the military, etc. If you want to learn more about this subject, we've uploaded a previous video solely dedicated to VR that's being suggested to you at the top right hand corner. But next is augmented reality. In contrast to virtual reality, AR is an interactive experience of a real-world environment where the objects that reside in the real world are enhanced by computer-generated perceptual information across multiple, if not all, sensory modulates. AR can be defined as a system that fulfills 3 basic features: a combination of the real and virtual world, a real-time interaction, and accurate 3D registration of virtual and real objects. The overlaid sensory information can be constructive, additive to the natural environment, or it can be destructive, meaning the natural environment is masked to show virtual objects. In this way, augmented reality alters the perception of the real world, whereas VR completely replaces the user's real-world environment with a simulated one. There are many camera-based AR apps you can use with your smartphone right now. If you happen to own an iPhone, you can download the Measure app from the App Store for free. This app enables you to quickly measure the size of real objects, a person's height, and it can automatically provide the dimensions of rectangular ones. IKEA also came up with an AR app called IKEA Place, which lets you place virtual furniture in your house by simply taking a photograph of your physical space. Perhaps one of the best free AR apps out there is Jigspace. This app allows you to explore interactive 3D objects of just about anything. The library includes a mixture of fields such as machines, science, how-to, space, and even history. If you want a more in-depth video about this topic, check out our video about AR on your top right-hand corner. And finally, the last in our shortlist is mixed reality. MR is the merging of real and virtual worlds to produce new environments and visualizations, where physical and digital objects coexist and interact in real time. As the name implies, mixed reality is the mixing of the real and virtual world. MR does not exclusively take place in either the physical or the virtual world, but is rather a hybrid of the two. MR is similar to augmented reality, but there is a key difference. Mixed reality allows virtual overlay of graphics to interact with the real world. On February 2019, Microsoft released their new pair of mixed reality smart glasses called HoloLens 2. In this showcase, they demonstrated their MR smart glasses with an application created with Unreal Engine. 2 months after the announcement, the HoloLens 2 emulator also was made available to developers, which allows developers to create applications for this MR device. The HoloLens 2 has a diagonal field of view of 52 degrees with a resolution of 47 pixels per degree, improved hologram stability, new hardware, and accelerated workloads such as eye tracking, fully articulated hand tracking, semantic labeling, spatial audio, etc. However, this device is not currently meant for consumers as its price is enormous, costing $3,500. In your top right hand corner you can find a more detailed video about MR. And there you have it, the 3 main realities that compose extended reality. That's why there is a need to improve this technology and come up with an XR device that encompasses all three realities. Instead of having a different device for each realm, a VR headset, an AR compatible device, and an MR headset, the market will eventually produce an affordable device meant for consumers that has all realities. One device to rule them all. On May 2020, Qualcomm, the company that makes the chip for the Oculus Quest VR headset, came up with a huge announcement. They will start collaborating with 15 world-leading operators to deliver XR viewers. These operators plan to make XR part of their 5G offerings for consumers and enterprises within 2021. The XR viewers, as they call them, are lightweight, head-worn glasses that connect to a smartphone powered by Qualcomm's Snapdragon 855 or 865 mobile platforms. Tethered to a 5G-enabled smartphone via USB-C cable, XR viewers unlock a new generation of immersive experiences using 5G-enabled smartphones that provide high bandwidth and low latency, which is essential for high-quality XR. On their website it states, consumers' favourite smartphone applications can become augmented reality experiences in front of their eyes, or workplace meetings can be revolutionised through holographic telepresence with virtual collaboration platforms, as XR and 5G come together to transform how the world connects, communicates and consumes content. To protect the market of XR devices and ensure software and hardware optimization, Qualcomm has an XR optimized certification program, which includes 6 degrees of freedom, head tracking performance on the viewer and smartphone, display calibration validation for the viewer, motion and photon latency validation on the viewer and smartphone, power and thermal test on the viewer and smartphone, interoperability between the viewer and smartphone. Within 1 to 4 years, they expect XR viewers to become wireless, while in the next 5 to 10 years we will probably have 5G tethered glasses. The tech company that designs GPUs is also focused on the development of XR technology. Their Cloud XR is their core platform for streaming virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality content from any open VR or XR application on a remote server, cloud, data center, or edge. Whether rendering complex graphics, stitching together 360-degree video, or rendering volumetric scenes, the Cloud XR streaming stack lets developers leverage a flexible, high-performance cloud. nRealLight are the first lightwear mixed reality glasses that look like normal glasses but offer the capability to blend in both the real world and with mixed reality world. They offer a 52-degree field of view and weigh only 88 grams. They come with a computing pack and controller, but can also be tethered to a smartphone. And perhaps the best part about the nRealLight MR glasses is that they come as a computer kit package too. With the development of these many XR devices, the future technology in general looks very bright. Did you like this video? Then show your support by subscribing, ringing the bell and enabling notifications to never...
All right, so it's just amazing to me how the future of VR and AR and MR are going to affect our students' lives from, I can think I had several students in my East class who were like, I just hate technology. I don't want anything to do with it. And I thought, but you have grown up in this world of technology. And so we need to get even those reluctant students engaged with technology, because this is going to be their future. Even just with healthcare, they're going to need to interact with AR and VR and things like that, especially as those glasses become cheaper and easier to wear. And I think as teachers, we also have to be aware of what's available and how we can communicate with our students and what tools they're bringing into the classroom that we may not be aware of. I'm just thinking of especially like middle school, high school students coming in with those glasses that you think look like regular glasses, and they're watching a movie while you're teaching. All right, so we're going to do our first breakout room, and you'll notice on the Jamboard that, I'm going to minimize this here, that there is a slide for the different groups. We'll have to see if we can communicate which group you're in. So when we get to that breakout room, you're going to explore, or you're going to brainstorm ways that you think you could use immersive technologies in your classroom, and perhaps, oops, I went too far, education as a whole and the future of the workforce. So as a group, you're going to record your thoughts. And when you look at the Jamboard, let me pull this over here so we can see it. There we go. You'll see that you've got the classroom, you've got education as a whole, and then the future workforce. Just, to take some time to stop and think about what we just looked at, process, and how you think you could use that yourself. All right, does anybody have any questions? Okay, so.
Hey, Anne, would you like 3 groups or 4 groups?
Let's do 3 groups.
All right, you just say the word and I'm clicking create.
All right. I am starting my little timer here. Let's do this for about 5 minutes just to take some time and introduce yourself to each other, because you're going to be going back into the same groups 2 more times. And go ahead and start the groups. People are slowly starting to come in. So I'm going to go ahead and I've got way too many boxes open here. Okay. All right, so I'm looking at your breakout Jamboards and looking at some of the ideas that you came up with. So in our pair deck, and you're welcome to share your thoughts by commenting here if you want to share in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and talk about some of the things that you talked about. We can also look at the Jamboard. So some different choices and how you could respond to this. So for group 1, they were looking at visiting historical sites virtually. And virtual field trips. And in our media design class that I teach, that's one of the things that we look at. I was surprised, even when we lived in East Texas, we were, about 2.5 hours away from Dallas, and just how many students hadn't even gone that far. So being able to have our students explore places that, is a cost is a prohibitive, and allowing them to travel. And then healthcare training for students in career classes, that would be a big benefit. Professional development, that's a great idea, group 2. And then create new inventions and visit virtual places like museums and things like that. And then the future of the workforce is working remotely. And I think, especially with those glasses, being able to have a more interactive meeting as opposed to just a Zoom call. I'm really fascinated with the idea of setting up a virtual meeting space where you're all in kind of that space together, even though you're not, and having, I feel like, a more realistic conversation. And then group 3, virtual tours for projects and research, exploring harder content by changing the perspective to a first-person walkthrough. I think that is a great idea. And I've seen some different resources out there as that being a great way for students to learn and practice empathy. So a lot of really great ideas that you guys shared. We'll come back over here to our pair deck. And we've got one response here. Virtual field trips would be excellent. Yeah, that's a, and there's so many resources out there for that type of thing. All right, so we're going to jump into learning goal 3 is what can I do with AR and VR in the classroom? So I have put together some different things, but first I want to get an idea of how you feel, how comfortable you are with adding AR and VR into your lessons. So in this slide, you have the option to grab an icon and you can put it next to, I already do this. I'm already using AR and VR in my classroom, or I can't wait to try some of these things with my students. I'm a little nervous about trying new tech. And then, nope, not doing it. And I don't know if there would be anybody here who might feel that way, but you should just be able to click on the little light bulb and then drag it to where, here we go, where you're feeling. I really, from a teacher perspective, I really like Pear Deck, I think, and especially like this dragging the icon, because it's a great way to kind of read the room without anybody feeling like they're getting called out. So we don't have anybody who's really already doing this. And we've got some who are a little bit nervous about trying new tech, and some that are, I can't wait to try. It can be hard sometimes. I've always kind of been the person that I want everything to go perfectly. And I've had to just embrace the concept that when I'm working with technology, there's just outside elements that I can't always control. Like my son is a big gamer and a big streamer and all of that. And every once in a while, our internet company goes, you have used enough. We are slowing you down. And it always tends to happen when I'm in a Zoom call or teaching an online class or something like that. And he's like, great, that's wonderful. So then you just have to go to plan B or C or D. Okay, so let's look at some ideas about immersive learning. When I first started teaching, this was one of the things that the science teacher across the hall used a lot of, Magic School Bus.
Seatbelts, everyone! Please let this be a normal field trip. With a friend? No way!
Cruising on down Main Street, you're relaxed and feeling good. Next thing that you know, you see it. Octopus in the neighborhood, surfing on the sound wave, swinging through the stars. Take a left at Joey Teston, take your second right past Mars on the Magic School Bus.
Okay, we won't watch all of it, but this, I think, I'm so excited to see VR and AR coming into the classroom like they are, because I can remember thinking, looking at Magic School Bus, man, If I could put my students on a magic bus like that, imagine the places that we could go and see right from the classroom, because we were a Title I school and had a lot of students on free lunch, and there just wasn't a lot of money. The school district I was working for had someone embezzle over $1 million from the district right before I started teaching there, which was awesome. And the area that we suffered the most in was technology, because as they were trying to pay employees and keep everything afloat, that got pushed to the back. So we just didn't have a lot of stuff. And there's so many, and I feel like, as bad as the pandemic was and all of that, some of the positives that came out is the companies that really stepped up their offerings of AR and VR and things like that that students can access. A lot of it is free. So we're going to look at some of those resources, and we're going to look at moving our students from passive to interactive. And I've heard this in a lot of different places, and I'm sure you probably have as well, that even though our students have grown up in a world of technology, they're passive consumers. They are watching TikTok videos. They are watching YouTube videos. They're doing a lot of watching and not a lot of interacting. And I really feel like AR and VR and mixed reality are a great way to grab their attention and move them into being more interactive. And so, like we've talked about before, these are some of the places that you're going to see AR and VR besides gamification, which is probably, like we saw in the video, one of the largest fields. But we're looking at healthcare, marketing, like the IKEA and Amazon apps that let you place the item you're thinking about buying in your actual place, tourism, construction. And you will get access to this slide deck at the end so that you can go back. I'm purposely breaking some rules in putting together these slides because I want these to be reference materials that you can go back to. So there's a lot more information on here that you would normally want to do in a presentation, but I want you to have it. This link right here for construction goes to that HoloLens too, which is pretty cool. And it's expensive, and it's primarily geared towards private industry who can afford, $3,500 for one headset. You're going to see it, and we already see it in entertainment and cinema with the different 3D movies and things like that, and in food and art and museums. So we really want to provide our students with AR and VR experiences that help prepare them for life outside the classroom. And I'm not going to read all of this to you, but it just talks about how you're seeing a lot more of private companies, public or private, who are using this enhanced technology to better promote and market their services. And I think this is the key right here. And they need talented people and firms in the field. We need people who are comfortable with creating these experiences. And a lot of this stuff is put together with coding, not all of it, but we need to get our students engaged and comfortable and understanding how to at least do some basic coding so that they're not shying away from possible opportunities for their future careers. So how does AR and VR affect student learning? And are there any valid reasons to use AR and VR in the classroom? And I feel like I'm a little nervous about where education is going in regard to technology. I went to a little mini conference, one day workshop thing back in February, and I sat in on a roundtable discussion that was school administrators, and all of them were kind of having this knee-jerk reaction of, we've got to get technology out of the classroom. We need to go back to paper and pencils. They were talking about limiting screen time. There was one school that, and I also taught an undergrad technology class too. And I think it was one of those students said that in the school they were in, that the administrators were not allowing any technology to be used until the afternoon. So I'm not exactly sure what that meant and how that looked, but we have to be better in managing the technology use, which is hard, and I know that, but not get rid of it completely, because there's too many benefits for our students. One is just appealing to their desire to learn in a way that captures their attention and is aligned with, you know, how they spend their time outside of school anyway. AR and VR tools can provide virtual objects like our augmented reality and our virtual field trips that we can access without spending a fortune on classroom materials. These AR and VR tools provide them, our students, with flexibility in expressing their knowledge. And, you know, gamifying, I have to admit, I've been a little reluctant to go that direction, but there are some great ways you can do that, because students love challenges. They love badges. They love being challenged. They love competing against their classmates. They like competing against themselves and beating their previous time. So, you know, we can leverage that to encourage them to be engaged in whatever lesson we're teaching. And another thing that we have to be cognizant of, and this is, I'm just kind of scraping the surface of this. I haven't really dived in deep enough yet, but learning opportunities provided by AR and VR can be especially beneficial for students with physical abilities. And I was looking at one that I have added the resource to a Wakelet page that I'm going to share with you that is specifically geared to working with students with autism and learning social skills. That looks really cool. Okay, so, you know, there's always barriers. What are some things that you are concerned about? What are some barriers for you in using AR and VR with your students? So go ahead and type some thoughts in there, and, you know, we can either commiserate together, or maybe someone can share some ideas of how they were able to overcome that barrier. So just take a minute or so and think about your classroom and what might be some barriers. And we'll show our responses here. Yeah, Wi-Fi. That's a big one. Getting that high-speed internet. And unfortunately, there's a lot of money that is available for schools to access, to upgrade. But, you know, if you're in a school district that's in a rural area, even if your school has money to pay for it, it might not be there. There may not be enough technology devices for students. You know, and that was one of the things you'll see, some of the resources I'm going to share with you, that students can use their smartphones to access this. One of the things that I did with my students is I had a couple old cell phones that the service was turned off, but it would still access Wi-Fi. So that could be a way to get around that. If you have Wi-Fi that can support that, and you don't want to have students using their own devices, you might put out you know, a note to the school or to the district or to the community. Hey, does anybody have any old cell phones that no longer have service, but we can use through Wi-Fi to access the apps? So lack of equipment, tech hijinks, students' ability to access at home, you know, that's a big thing too. I love the idea of doing like a flipped classroom where the students can access the lecture materials outside the classroom, but, you know, if they don't have access at home, that's not really going to help them too much. So some good barriers there that are can be a real barrier. So in looking at VR equipment for classrooms, here's some different things for VR headsets. And I used a lot of different materials to kind of pull all of this together. Jennifer Gonzalez with Cult of Pedagogy and Jamie Donnelly in her immersive classroom. Those are all linked on the Wakelet and under resources. So you don't have to worry about trying to write that down. You'll have all of that. There are some cheap things that you can do that work with your smartphones. Google Cardboard is pretty cheap. Merge is a little bit more expensive, but they are designed to be used with students in classrooms. You've got standalone, you don't need a smartphone. You've got MetaQuest 2. So here's the thing about Oculus. When I was an East teacher, which was in the 2019-2020 school year, we couldn't get Oculus to work. And that was because at that point, Facebook bought Oculus and you can only use Oculus with a Facebook account, which of course is blocked by the school district. And so even though as an East classroom, we were supposed to have our own server, it still didn't work. So we could never use, we had an Oculus Rift. Now with the whole metaverse thing, Facebook is, or I guess I should say Metaverse is now using or creating a new device called MetaQuest 2, which will not use Facebook, but it still uses a platform that you have to create a profile on. So that's another thing that we'll have to see if school districts will approve that as opposed to Facebook. Then you have Tethered. And this is where you have a VR system that is connected to a computer or a cable. And if my son had been home, I would have taken a picture because he's got all of the cables. He's got them hooked up on hooks from the ceiling and all coming down into the middle of the room. So he is not married, doesn't have kids, has his own money. So he has the Valve Index, which costs around $1,200. So it is not only cost prohibitive, but it's also probably fragile enough that I'm not sure it could stand up to daily use with students, where your mobile devices and your standalone are probably going to be a little bit more resilient. So those are just some different options for VR headsets. And for our next breakout room, I have curated a big list of different AR and VR resources that you can go to easily embed into a lesson that you're already doing. And some of them we've already looked at. There is one specifically here for pre-K through third graders at Disrupt Ed. Some are free, some are not. So when we go back over to our Jamboard, if you come up here, let's see. Hopefully, I'm not sure. Hold on a second. I am screen sharing. Okay. Let me know if you can't see my screen, because all of a sudden it doesn't look. It says I am. So hopefully you can see it. If not, throw out in the chat that you cannot. Okay, so on the Jamboard, you're going to arrow through to the next set of slides. That is your ARVR sources, and you're going to see pros and cons. You'll be with the same group. So if you were group 1, you're still going to be group 1. If you're group 2, you're still going to be group 2, or yeah, and then group 3. And look at the pros and the cons. how would this work in the classroom? Why would it not? Cost being one of them, so that we can share together afterwards what will work, what won't. Because I know when I'm in a training situation kind of like this, I see all of these different things and I want to stop and take a moment to look at it so that when the training is over, I have an idea of something that I want to go ahead and use with my students. So does anybody have any questions? We're going to take about 15 minutes. So if you need to take a little break, you can do that. And then you'll spend 15 minutes with your group exploring, and there's a lot of different ways you could do this. If you want to each take one and explore on your own and then come back together and share your ideas. If you want one person to share their screen and you explore together, it's whatever works best for your group. Each group has, 2 groups have 4, 1 group has 3, so that'll work out well. And I don't see that anybody has any questions. So we're going to go back to the same rooms, and it's 11:07. So we'll come back at around 11:25 and share what you discovered with all of these. Some of these I have explored and used, and some are actually new to me. So I'm curious to see what you think of them and how they will work with your students. So I'm going to go ahead. You guys are off going to your rooms, and see you in a little bit. Hopefully you got an opportunity to share some of the different things that you were looking at. So we've got another slide in our pair deck. What resources did your group explore and what were your favorites? I was looking through this, and Jigspace I did a little exploring with last night, and it's interesting that it was in the video and it's listed on 2 of the different resources that I have for teachers. And they were talking about this vast library. While it's really cool, and I have it downloaded on my phone, I thought, well, when you go and you look at the app for it, it's not my opinion of vast, although there are some really cool stuff that is there, like how to fix a leaky sink. I thought that was kind of interesting. What was it? A Panda baby warmer, and a Hero steam engine, a microwave oven. So just some, it's really cool to see this in your space and manipulate it. You've got definitions and things like that. I'll go back over here, see what you all are sharing. So we've got one response. So Quipper and the Google Lens, those are pretty neat tools as well. And if you go back and look on the list, one thing that people didn't look at, Merge EDU is really cool. It's kind of like Jigspace in a sense, but you're using a cube, and I don't know what I did with mine. I guess I put it away. So we're just gonna jump over here real quick. But you use a cube. You can buy one for like $20, but you can also print one on the computer and fold it, and it works about 95% as well as the actual foam Merge cube. And I will put access to that in that Wakelet. So this is really nice because the students are holding this cube, and you can see what it looks like there. And so then they're holding it in their hand and they can manipulate it and turn it around and do all of these things. Some of it's free, some of it's not, but they do have some good materials to use for the classroom. That was one of the ones that really kind of got me interested in all of this to begin with. Oops. I don't know where my, oh good, pages unresponsive. And there's technology for us. So if anybody wants to share, well, I'm waiting for my computer to cooperate. Get to the next page here. I'm going to stop sharing it for a second. See if I can get it to cooperate with me again. This was one of the reasons why I was not a huge fan of, there we go. Now we're back in business. With Nearpod in the beginning, because I had created student-led presentations for them to work through on their own. And it didn't work. Let's see, let me get us back to where we want to be. Share my screen again. There we go. Okay. So we've got Quiver and the Google Lens. We'll come back over here. So group 1 was looking at JigSpace. Group 2 is looking at Quiver Vision and the Google Lens and JigSpace. Yeah, that is a little bit of a concern with those glasses, especially, you know, cheating made easy. We certainly don't want to encourage that. And I think that's where, as educators, we get a little nervous about trying this new technology, because everybody gets excited about pumping all of that into the classroom, but we also have to have a plan for managing it, which is not easy. So I think you need to have proper uses and you need to have consequences, and you have to clearly communicate that up front. And then Quiver Vision, I've heard a lot of good things about that, but it's not free, and that's kind of one of the frustrating ones. And then teachers pay teachers. I threw that out there because I was kind of surprised at what has already been created. And I think there's 2 ways you could look at that. Some of the stuff is free, some you have to purchase, some is kind of pricey, but some of it could just give you some inspiration of, no, you know, I might be able to do that myself, something similar to that. And then another one, with Quiver Vision and older grades may lose interest in coloring. I was always surprised at my middle school and high school kids wanting to color, but they really wanted that detailed stuff. And so then to have their coloring pages come to life might be kind of cool. And again, this might be something that, like, maybe the library media has funds for a subscription to that or something like that. I don't know, our library media people could maybe share that with us. Okay, so we're going to move on here. So the big thing is to move our students from being consumers to being producers, because that is really where we need them to go, and where the future and careers are. I think everybody is going to be interacting with this media. Even, you know, I have some students, I'm just going to be a mechanic. Well, do you know how much technology is used in repairing cars, especially all of these, you know, your new cars have so much technology in them that you're going to need to be able to interact with that. And I think augmented reality is a great way to do that. Jamie Donnelly is really into AR and VR, and she's written a couple books. The Immersive Classroom is one of them, and that is a source that I used in putting this together. And she did an interview with Dr. Richard Webb, who's the head of the Innovative Design Studio at the University of Alaska in Anchorage. And he makes the comment that students use a part of their brain when playing that goes beyond their subconscious into deeper level of learning. So students who are really engaging and creating with these technologies, they're creating a deeper meaning for themselves and are going to retain that knowledge longer. She did an interview with him. This is the link to that. It's also on the Wakelet page. That's really worth sitting and listening to, because he talks a lot about the brain and how it learns. And they talk about, specifically, they're talking about AR and VR, and it's really, it's definitely worth listening to. So we also want to incorporate the ISTE standards for students in all of our classes, regardless of what grade level and what subject we're teaching. We need to prepare our students for future opportunities and future success. And the ISTE standards for students talks about empowered learners, digital citizens, our students being knowledge constructors and innovative designers, computational thinkers, creative communicators, and global collaborators. So especially as the VR glasses really explode, and by the time, especially our young students are graduating from high school and going into college and into the workforce, it's probably going to be a more common thing. And we want them to embrace the idea that not only will they use these tools, but that they can be a part of creating these tools. This is, these are one of the online presenters from the ISTE conference this summer. This video is part of some smaller videos. This is a teacher in Spain that, and he'll tell you in the first video, which I linked in the Wakelet page, that he and his partner in this presentation were not excited about AR to begin with. But as they started to see how their students could create with AR and VR, they got more on board. So we might not watch the whole video, it's about 5 minutes long, but it talks about, or he demonstrates some of the projects that the students have done using AR and VR.
So many great ideas, don't you think? Indeed, when we were designing our strategy about augmented reality at school, one quotation, but one of my favorite persons in the world, came to mind. It's technology married with liberal arts, married with the humanities, that yields us the results that make our hearts sing. And it was the great Steve Jobs who pronounced these words. We wanted our students to learn about the technology, but also to foster their creativity, to make some decisions in order to foster their critical thinking ability, to be able to use AR to communicate their own personal ideas and who they are to the world, to use it as an excuse to collaborate with their classmates, and last but not least, to learn about the contents of every subject, maths, literature, arts, history, so we spread AR across the curriculum. And these are some of the projects that we have developed up to now. The first project I would like to comment on is called Crafteando el Colegio. In this project, the first thing the students in year 5 had to do was measure in the school. To do so, they used the Measure app on their iPads, which uses augmented reality. While they did so, they created a diary. They described the school, and having done so, they recreated the school in Minecraft Education Edition. Do you know Battleship?
I'm gonna fast forward through that one.
students had to do some research on characters such as Thomas Alva Edison, the Lumiere brothers, or Ada Lovelace. Then, they created and animated their own 3D models and wrote, recorded, and edited voice notes that they could add to their scenes. And this is the result.
So those are just a couple ideas that instead of students, writing a report or making a Google slide presentation, they can use augmented reality to do like a book report or a research project that they did on a particular person. So a lot of really cool ideas out there. We were going to go into one more breakout room, but I think we'll probably not have time to do that, which is fine. But I wanted to give you some other resources and show you some of the different things that I used in putting this together. These specifically, and some on the other list were dual resources where students could consume it and interact with it, but they could also create with it. But these specifically allow students to create their own AR and VR environments. We have 3D Bear, which was created by teachers in Finland. I think one of the things that is a little probably frustrating with this, especially when we're looking at equipment, is that a lot of them are apps. And I know being an East teacher, I tried to be really careful about how I handled that situation, because pretty much all of my students, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, all had smartphones, but not everybody had unlimited data and things like that. And they would find apps they would want to use. So I did have some, like I said, some old cell phones. They were one-to-one with Chromebooks, and we had some iPads. So I tried to do that first, but if they were just determined that they were going to download this app on their phone, I tried to get in touch with the parents and just kind of give them a heads up. Hey, we're doing this for a class project. Is that fine? Just to make sure that, we had that line of communication. Because I have been burned before. Well, the teacher said I had to, and I said, hold on, that's not what I said. So we want to make sure that we're keeping those lines of communication open. And something are apps that you can use on a computer, but most of them are for your Android and your Apple products. The CoSpaces is really good, especially because this one is getting the kids involved in creating with code. And there's a lesson page where you can check out what other teachers have done, which you'll also see with Metaverse. And Assembler is similar to Metaverse. Thing is a really great resource that allows students to create AR experiences on any surface. Tilt Brush is a lot of fun. This one, he uses this with his VR, and it looks a little bit like the girl in the video where she's, doing the paintbrush. And he says it's very soothing. It's kind of like a Bob Ross thing. And he's painting these big murals in his room, and he really enjoys that. This one, I thought, as a previous writing teacher with all of my students who don't like to write, Dramatic AR is a really cool app that encourages students to write in a more engaging way, I think, and in a way that speaks to their use of technology. Adobe Aero is a new app from Adobe that lets users create augmented reality. I actually just came across this a couple days ago, and I haven't had a chance to try it yet, but it looks really cool. AR Maker, and that's supposed to be the word scan, lets users sketch, scan, and snap the world around them. This one I think is pretty user friendly. And then one of the things that we learned, and I don't know if you've seen this or not at the ISTE conference, is that apparently Flipgrid has rebranded themselves as Flip, and they are kind of expanding outside of education to making it a broader use, but of course still a lot of great tools being used with education. The only thing that, I don't know if this is good or not, is that Microsoft has now acquired Flipgrid. So I am hoping with all of the money that Microsoft has that, one of the great things that we teachers love about what Flipgrid was that there was so much we could do that was free. So I'm hoping that that remains the case. You can go to this blog post and it walks you through how to use Flip to create AR, which is really cool. One of the things that was on the other page, I'm going to jump back here real quick, that I encourage you to check out is the Scavenger EDU is doing AR scavenger hunts. There was a lot of great ideas for like back to school and doing like an AR scavenger hunt in your classroom. So I encourage you to go back and look at that one. And again, I have this Wakelet page set up because I was coming across so many different resources, and I wanted to make sure that you had access to all of those. So this is going to be in the presentation too. It's got, this is ARVR and EDU is a great page from Jamie Donnelly. There's an evolution of VR video. There's some other people that are very active in AR and VR in the future of work. Rachel Ann Sibley is definitely worth looking at. And then there's some other things like Procreate that we haven't looked at. And then Unity, the 3D animations. Toddy is a good one. This right here, I'm going to pull this from over here. This is one of the sources that I used in putting this together. And if you haven't seen this from Cult of Pedagogy, I think with tax it costs like $27, but this tool is invaluable. So it's a teacher's guide to tech. She puts one out every year, and it will tell you all of the tools that are out there for just about anything you would want to do. She's got an introduction in how it works. And then she has it split up into like, if you wanted to do an animated GIF, or you want to use it for art, or you want to use this technology for assessment, audience response. I came all the way down here for, and she's got it separated into math, 3D printing, encoding. And I used it for the virtual and augmented reality. What's interesting is this just came out, and Figment AR has apparently disappeared. It looked like a great tool to use from the description, but I could not get the website to work. So technology comes and goes so fast sometimes. So all of these things are linked on that Wakelet page so that you have access to them. And so what we were going to do is go into a breakout room, but it's 11:48, so we're not going to do that. I do encourage you though, if you would like, you can on your own go to the page here and you can put your favorite and share how you would like your students to use it, because you'll have access to go back and look at this later. But if you would just share an aha moment, something that you learned today, what is a takeaway that you're interested in using with your students in your classroom? And if you have any questions, you can ask questions if you have it. Jen says her kids love scavenger hunts. They are always so much fun. I would love to see the students. I think something that might be fun is have at the end of the year, have students create a scavenger hunt for your class for the incoming students for the next year. That's definitely the East teacher in me talking. Have those students share what they need to know and let them create it. They love to create stuff and share and help and all of those things. All the resources, great. And there is so much, and I'll show you. This is kind of how I felt. The AR, VR, all of the tech out there, there is so much. It's kind of overwhelming, really, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this presentation to curate all of these sources, because we really just kind of hit the tip of the iceberg, and there is just a ton left to use, which is nice because there's so much out there that it will speak to different students, it will speak to different teachers, because not everybody's going to like everything, but you have so many choices out there that there's going to be something for everybody. All right, we've got Dorothy says, love all the suggestions. Yeah, I would really love to see, in fact, even with my grad school students who are teachers themselves, I'm thinking of having them create their own AR type report. I think they'll love that. So I've got a vocabulary page in here for you. And on this, these are all of the resources that I use. I tried to put some actual research, like this one is a good one, augmented reality research and applications. Then there's the link to that. And I believe I put all of this on the Wakelet page, and I'm going to go ahead and share that in the chat so you have that right now. And then I also want to give you access to, let's see here. No, I'm not sure how to do that. I know there's a way to share this, because I want you to have access to that before we go to. I may have to edit it. Let me see. Learning about Pear Deck. Just maybe once I do that, it'll let me have it. Share and reflect and review link. There we go. And here is the Pear Deck link. Hopefully that will work so that you can look at that too. And then there's generate takeaways. This will create a Google Doc and share it with them. Oh, that's fun. Okay, let's do that. One of the great things about being an East teacher was it took me out of feeling like I had to know everything, and I quickly learned that I did not. Then we don't have Google Classroom, so that's not going to work. Okay. Hopefully that link works for you. Okay, does anybody have any final questions? All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm glad that everybody came, and thank you for spending a couple hours with me, and hopefully you've learned some new stuff that you can use with your students in the fall. And that's all I have for you today. But at the end, you can always, let me put this in the chat box too. If you have any questions about anything, coming to grad school with us and learning instructional technology. We'd love to have you as a student, or if you have any questions that I can answer about instructional technology or immersive technology. I'll put my email in the chat here and you can always email me, but otherwise that's all I've got for you. And again, thank you for sharing the morning with me, and y'all have a great rest of your day.